for libations.
And it's all fresh. But today, that's the strawberry green tea that you have.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys.
All right.
We're going to Facebook Live, and I'm smudging.
There we go.
I got you.
Thank you.
Just try not to get me like out of food.
Oh, we got food. I know, right?
Yeah.
Great. So Snow and I'm sorry, what's your name again? Joe. Snow and Joe. So can I ask y'all to just, because we're going to be taking photos, so we want to kind of fill in the space a little bit. So if y'all can just sit in the chairs, that would be great. Appreciate y'all. So again, we do have photo releases for y'all to sign. If you don't want to be on camera, you do not have to be. Okay. And at any time, you can feel free to get up, get food, get whatever you need. We got plenty of food, right? So I'm gonna probably be doing a mixture of standing and sitting, right? It'll be formal, informal, listening session, conversation. So again, I'm Zoe Flowers. I'm the, why are you know what? You are too funny. I'm the director of survivor programs at the Women of Color Network. And the Women of Color Network is a national organization. We work on domestic and sexual violence. We work on lots of different issues, but our work is mainly centered on centering the voices, the wellness, and the leadership of women of color, right? And when we talk about women of color, we use that in a very broad term. Women of color, some people think it's just black women, but it's in our definition, it's a broad term. So it's folks that have a shared history of forced migration, forced enslavement, colonization, war-torn countries, things of that nature, right? Colonization, all of those things. And so if you want more information on women of color, the term and our definition, and more information just about Women of Color Network as a whole, you can go to our website, which is WOCNinc.org. Grab that. Thank you. So, since we have such an intimate crowd, I'd love to get people's sort of names, because I know a few folks in the room, but I don't know everybody. So, I'll start with you.
Paul Joseph.
Okay, Paul. And you're from?
I'm sorry. From
That's okay.
Oxford, Ohio.
Okay. All right, great. So then
Come
take-
here.
Yes.
Sorry.
Miss Joy?
No, I forgot that I'm videoing.
Yes,
Oh.
you're videoing, but you can talk to me and I'll repeat it back.
Yeah, you're fine.
So Kyndra Joy from
Charleston, South Carolina.
Charleston, South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Charity Jackson. I'm originally from Dallas, Texas, but I live in Chicago.
Great, thank you. And
All
then
right.
folks back here. Joe Nathan Miller from New Orleans.
Snow Adams from Chicago.
Snow Adams from Chicago.
Nita Blakes from right here in New Orleans.
Theta Blakes from New Orleans.
Vera Warren Williams. I'm from Cross the Canal in the Nightwalk.
Thank you.
My name is Malik, and I'm from Gentilly, right here in New Orleans.
Okay, thank you. And again, thank you so much for coming and sharing your Tuesday night with me. So, why we're here, we at the Women of Color Network, we're addressing lots of different issues. We're addressing racial and ethnic bias, gender bias, violence against cis and trans, queer, gender neutral people of color, also gender non-conforming. We work across communities at the Women of Color Network. We're also working on barriers for deaf and hard of hearing women and other women with disabilities as well. So we work across communities, we work across issues, and we are one of the few women of color led national organizations working across these issues, right? So our 2018 strategic strategies really are about identifying and reducing risk factors that increase perpetration, right? And we're working on decreasing perpetration, decreasing victimization, decreasing risk factors, and increasing protective factors. That's really what our priorities for 2018 are. So this Uber project, this Uber funding could not have come at a better time for us. We are doing listening sessions across the country, as some of y'all know, as part of the Uber project. So I was in San Francisco in March. That was where we did our first Uber listening session. And then I was in LA a few weeks after that, and now I'm in New Orleans, and next week I'll be in Miami, and then I'll be in the Virgin Islands in July, and Albany, New York, and DC. So we're going all across the country and really having conversations about how our communities can be safer while we're in Uber, right? While we are utilizing these services. So as many of you know, or maybe some of y'all don't know, Uber committed $5 million over 5 years to fund programs that prevent sexual assault, okay? And so we at WOCN were so excited because we're actually one of those organizations. And so Uber is really funding us and funding all the organizations to do the work that they're already were doing. And because Women of Color Network really is about bringing folks together, we said, you know what, we have these different meetings and convenings and things that we're already doing across the country. Why don't we tack these listening sessions onto the work that we're already doing, right? So we put together an advisory committee. We came up with a set of questions, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight, just to sort of lay the groundwork. So if anybody has any questions before we get into it, you can let us know. Okay. All right. So we pulled this advisory committee together, and the advisory committee is a mix of communities of color-led organizations that are working on domestic violence, sexual assault, sexual assault in LGBT communities, right? And so we wanted to come up with some baseline questions to start conversation. So we have sort of our 4 core questions, but we also want anything that comes up. This is a space of conversation. And so what's going to happen with all of our questions is once I get done with all of the visits, we will compile everything that we heard and we will present that to Uber. So we're also going to be producing fact sheets that are going to be rolled out to Uber as a corporation. But our hope also is that riders and drivers will also have the information. Okay? And some really exciting things rolled out from Uber actually as of this morning, which I'll share with you before we convene tonight. Okay? So the goal is to hear from y'all, bring it back to the organization, and have the social change that we all want to see. So the first question is, what baseline information does Uber need to know about rape culture and consent? Because we felt like we couldn't even start this conversation until we came up with some just baseline information. Like, what do they need to know about rape culture? What do they need to know about consent? Just right out the gate. And is everybody familiar with rape culture? Yeah. We hear a lot of conversations about rape culture now. So yes, Ms. Snow.
I think that's
Well, I'm gonna need you to use your outside voice.
my outside.
Yes, please. Because the air conditioning.
I'm a very soft-spoken individual.
Okay. Yeah, I have faith.
So I think that's something that people should know about rape culture is that even though it's present and it's subtle, it's like the undercurrent of a lot of like the media that we have, and it's a bit abstract. While there is a certain level of people trying to reclaim different words used that, by people who participate in rape culture, but then there are fights and marches and things like that to reclaim some of those things, to use those things to empower people. While that fight is still happening, there's still negative aspects of rape culture. Like, you can't, just because it's starting to turn over doesn't mean you can start using those words and you can start making jokes about it, or you can start ignoring, or like you stop fighting those different things that contribute to it just because other people are trying to take words back and empower themselves with it, like the word slut or the word dyke. There are real slut marches going on to reclaim those words, and there are real dyke marches, and anti-rape culture marches, and like she can wear what she wants, type of thing. So, but that doesn't mean that that just because we're fighting to take those words back doesn't mean that you can still that the fight is over, or that you can participate in what we're trying to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you said so many key points, and one of the things we say at WOCN is many things are true at once. So yeah, all these great things are happening. We're talking about things more than ever, but there's still issues that need to be addressed. right? And so do you want to give a definition of what you think rape culture is? You want to?
No. Were you looking at me?
I was looking at Snow.
Oh, okay.
That's all right.
Yeah, please,
if you want to give a
no.
definition of
I'd
rape
rather
culture,
she,
you can.
no, I'd rather
Okay.
she do it.
I think that rape culture is an aspect or phase of society that facilitates, encourages, and holds space for the disrespect of mistreatment of and violence towards female identifying characters
Yes.
or individuals and beings
Yes.
on Earth.
Yes. Absolutely. So, and so what rape culture can look like then, you talked about jokes. So rape culture can look like jokes that dehumanize women. Obviously sexual assault. Sexual assault can look like sexual assault is a sort of manifestation of rape culture.
Can I edit something really
You
fast?
sure can.
Because I was very wrong. I said female identifying. The rape culture also covers up things that happens to males.
That's
or-
right.
and
That's
everything
right.
like
That's right.
that. And it silences them and things. And that's a very large part of it that I just not mistaken. I'm sorry. I apologize. But yeah, it does include that too.
That's right. So rape culture doesn't just hurt women, it hurts men as
It hurts
well. And
everybody.
gender non-conforming folks as well. It has an impact on everyone. And we would say that rape culture is also part and parcel of white supremacy, right? Rape culture, white supremacy, all those things go together. Okay. So, yes.
And then the group that I'm familiar with is college level young
Yes.
adults.
Yes.
They tend to think that if you're involved intimately or sexually with a person, that you know that it's not rape.
Yes.
You know, be it consensual or not, they tend to not think it's a rape. But if you have sex with this person and it's not consensual, it is rape. So, a young lady, she had sex with her boyfriend, and then when she got drunk, he let his friends come in and have their way, and she didn't want to report it. Like she thought it was, she knew it wasn't okay, but she didn't see the real magnitude of what had happened because her boyfriend was part of it. And they seem to, just like domestic violence, everybody thinks domestic means it had to be somebody in the household type thing. No, domestic violence does not necessarily mean that it had to be someone in your household. You know, a husband can rape his wife.
Absolutely. And we see the same thing also, as you said, with husbands and wives. There are wives that don't think that it's possible to be raped within a marriage as well. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think also with rape culture, but just piggybacking off of is educating a culture of consent. What is consent? What does consent looks like? Because some people have different varying degrees of what they believe consent is, but legally, what consent is for adults. I think people need to be aware and educated on what consent is.
That's right. I'm so glad you brought that up because that was something that our advisory committee thought was really important to add to the conversation, was not just what Uber needs to know about rape culture, but what do they need to know about consent as well. So what do you think? What do you think they need to know? Like what baseline information would they need to know?
Being an educator and going through many trainings, in our training, anyone who, like she said, is impaired, somebody is drunk, they're not prepared to consent. If somebody is a minor, they cannot consent. So educating people on that, people being who are underage, people who are under the influence, whether it be under alcohol or drugs, even though they are, they're not in a psychological or mental space to consent, and making people aware of that.
Yes.
I think that in terms of Uber and its drivers, what I'm thinking about is if they pick up a fare and there are people in the car that, like you say, are not in their right frame of mind, if they may be impaired, or if they hear conversations that might lead to that this is potentially a situation where this person may be raped or taken advantage that's in my fare right now, I have the ability to, if not stop it, but I guess that's the safeguards that need to be put into place, but also like make mental and physical notes in terms of who it was, who was the fare, where did you bring them, you know, how many people, you know, all of the like identifying things. And I think at that point, report it, because if the victim is able to at some point testify, the fact that the driver heard and knew could corroborate what, you know, what she's saying,
Yes.
or he's saying,
Yes.
that occurred.
Yes.
But I want to say really a way to catch it before it happens.
Yes.
So setting up ways to, you know, and even asking the person at that, the person in the fair, are you okay?
Yeah, that's really important.
Who are you? You know, what's your name? Because the fare might be, and Paul might be the person that called the Uber, and I'm just a passenger. So you don't necessarily know me, the passenger. So, sweetheart, dog, what's your name? Are you okay? You don't seem like you know, how many fingers am I, you know, whatever, do whatever sobriety test or whatever to help, you know, kind of like safeguard against that. And another thing that I thought about was that upscale boarding school, upstate, where the young men had this ritual where they basically raped, or they had this thing where they had sex with all of the underclass, all of the freshman girls that were coming in, and it's a big trial now.
Oh, okay.
But I'm thinking about rape culture. That's a rape culture that says,
Yes.
you know, we upperclassmen, we're going to victimize the young freshman girls, because it's a boarding school, you know, and take advantage of them. So that's part of the rape culture that needs to
They
be.
can't identify without dominating somebody.
We can't what?
They can't identify without dominating somebody.
Can you say more?
Off that, I mean that was the most condensed thing. I mean everything else that everybody said is about what I had in mind.
So who can't identify
So
without dominating?
whoever, like when you were talking about supremacy earlier, in order to maintain that supremacy doesn't come without dominating a group of people. So in order to maintain that identity of supremacy, you got to dominate someone. In the case of this school, it was these freshman girls. And I mean, like, think of most schools where it's the upperclassmen picking on young classmen.
Right.
Segregation, discrimination, everything, you know, and all the hardships, those, you know, firsts at universities, whether it was the first African American female, cisgender, transgender, and LGBTQ community, what they had to go through. They were, you know, if there's no, you know, they had to enter these systems of domination as the sole person against them. So
Yeah.
that's an awful. Yeah.
And can you, for folks on Facebook Live who may not know what cisgender actually means?
So cisgender means you identify as the gender you were biologically born with. Trans means you identify as the other gender you were not biologically born with.
Thank you. Thank you so
You can
much.
couch it better.
Thank you.
I tried.
No, you got it. You got it. You got it. Excellent. All right. And Stephanie, just make sure you speak kind of loud. Thank you.
Mississippi outside voice.
Yeah, that's right. Mississippi outside voice. Thank you.
There is such a subtle difference between, we're kind of in this world where we can have it all. And so there's a really, 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 really gray line between having it all and taking it all, or doing it all. I can have it all, but that doesn't mean I can take whatever I want.
Wow.
It also doesn't mean that I can do whatever I want. And so I think when we think about rape culture in the broadest sense, there are people who believe, and we all get this from places, even from our church, you can have it all, but that doesn't mean I can do it all and take it all. And so when we talk about consent, it's even at the, is it okay for me to get in your car? Someone tried to get in my car today because they thought I was an Uber driver. Because the color matched. And if my doors weren't locked, they would have actually gotten in.
Right.
So just even, are you the person who I'm supposed to see? Is it okay for me to get in your car? Asking those permissions along the way, because you don't have the right to take it all or do it all, especially when other people are involved.
So any responses to that? Any further thoughts along those lines? Okay. So I'm going to shift into the next question then. And so the next question really is about, how does rideshare make us more vulnerable? So when I say us, I mean folks of color, folks that may be gender non-conforming, folks that may be of a certain income level and use rideshare because it's cheaper, right? So you're getting in cars with folks that you don't know. So how does that make us more vulnerable as communities?
I think another thing to add to that is possible, like immigrants or people who don't necessarily speak the language, and so they become more vulnerable because they're not necessarily able to communicate what happened to them.
Yep.
And also they may be afraid based upon whatever their immigration status is, so they don't say nothing.
Yeah. So one is the language piece, and then the other is the current climate that we're in, are going to make people just afraid to speak up. So yeah.
Also, we have to be reminded of social economic contributing factors. How most people who are using Ubers, whether they be students, whether they be people who have less means. So these are people that are probably using Uber on a more daily basis, and they're being not exposed, because that sounds but they're being in contact with all of these different people. So for these people who maybe need a ride after they work different shifts from work and other things, pretty much who are the customer and how they're interacting with the people that are picking them up, or what are those people picking up perceptions of them. So that's very important.
Yes. Yes.
And it would be easy to watch people, right? If you're constantly using a rideshare service, that even if I wasn't part of the rideshare, that I could just be watching you if you constantly, I get picked up early in the morning from work.
Or learning my schedule.
Learning your schedule.
Yeah.
And then like I said, the guy who tried to get in my car, it could be easy for me to come in and say, hey, you waiting on the Uber, but come on, I'll take you instead.
Right.
Because that has happened.
That's true. That happened to me. And
And
my
our-
mother, actually. They were like, well, I can just turn the meter off, and then you just give me $20, and I'll just take you wherever you want to go.
And also monitoring, making sure that Uber employees are not giving their vehicles to other people, or other family members, or hey, I got 3 or 4 cars, so I'm going to sign up And you know, I think that's also for a driver safety. I mean, not a driver, but a passenger safety issue. Like, how do I know the person that's picking me up is actually the person picking me up?
That's the first time I've heard that in 3 states. Nobody has said that. How do they know that the person that is actually picking them up is the driver? I mean, I guess because there's the photo.
What tends to happen sometimes as a passenger, the people go and say, Malik,
Yeah.
and then you get,
You say yes.
instead of that, what I need to say to the driver, who are you picking up? So you're in turn, before you get in the car, who are you?
Right.
And who did you come to pick up? And if he's not saying, I came to pick up Kyndra, or I came to pick up Vera, then you're not my driver. So keep it moving, because a lot of times when the person there come out, especially if they high or whatever, they'll say, Kyndra,
Yeah.
and it, you know, because that's who they're looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
So don't disclose
Who you are.
who you are. You want to know who the driver is.
Right.
And then the same
They
thing
do.
with the
They do.
driver, for the driver's protection,
Right.
the driver needs to say, who are you?
Which they do sometimes.
You know what I'm saying? You know, because it's almost like a taxi now. It's like people just see a car like cruising or whatever. And like you said, I've had people outside here with similar make and model cars jump, you know, prepare to jump in somebody, and it was like, I'm not an Uber driver. You know, it's like, because they were waiting for that type of car.
Yeah.
But a customer came up in that type of car.
Yeah.
So, you know, being able to do the cross check on it, I guess,
But they're so quick with it now. Like, I drive Uber, and so like it was like 3 white men, and I was just like, I'm not your Uber driver. I'm not picking you up. And they're just like, well, you can be our Uber driver. We'll make it worth your while. And it's just like, no, you're not my person. And then you kind of like have to almost I try not to drive late at night, because the later it is, the more vulnerable as at least as a black female driving the streets with conferences and all this other stuff that's popping off. You just want to make sure that you're safe, in a sense, because they could just get you, and I keep a machete in my car, so
So,
I'm just flat out.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I was supposed to say that on Facebook Live.
I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, don't let people know. It's supposed to be
Sit
the
there, I'm
element of
getting in her car.
surprise.
Yeah, just saying, you know, and I keep it on my lap when you're driving.
So when you're saying, obviously you do things to keep yourself safe.
You do.
But are there certain times when things are more? Because I'm thinking of, so what makes you feel more vulnerable? Which I think some things we obviously know, but I feel like still we need to name those things for the organization. So for you as a driver, what makes you more vulnerable?
Oh, Lord. It is in the city. You know, people come to the city to have a good time. So when you come to New Orleans, everybody's just like, oh, where can I get my drink? Where can I get my? It's automatic. They forget that people live here, make a living. You know, and so you deal with that often. And so just reminding people, just having conversations with people of who you are. This is not the only thing that I do. I'm a social worker. I do this. Like, so people can actually attach a livelihood with you besides them just saying, oh, I'm just a cab driver.
Right.
In a sense, so giving people some type of association, and usually they'll be like, oh, then you can engage them in a dialogue.
Yeah.
But when people are just intoxicated and just feel that they can just say whatever or do whatever, it can become very uncomfortable.
They forget who they are.
They do forget who they are.
They come here so they can be somebody else.
So they could be somebody
And act,
else,
you know,
and they
a way that
forget.
they can't act where they come from. You
It's
know,
a big
especially
easy.
with conferences.
Yeah. So when I have at least 3 white males or more, because I have a little SUV, I can get uncomfortable.
Especially if they're sitting behind.
Especially if they're sitting behind me.
And they are.
And then, so that makes me think, man, I should have went to Vegas like that. I should have put Vegas on my thing. I need to figure that out because there is something about this is a. They feel like it's a party town.
It
and
is.
it's like what you're saying. Like everything's available to me. I'm
And
in
then
New
they tell
Orleans
you
and
they're pretty.
You're here for
Oh,
me.
you're
and
pretty.
this person is here for me. Everything is here to service me.
It's so, it's just, and it's just,
Literally.
Literally.
it's disgusting to me. They be like, oh, but you're so pretty though. Like, I'm supposed to be ugly. You know, but we can have fun with you. You know what I'm saying? Like we commit. It's like, no, I'm not your. Yeah, I'm not your concubine. Like, I'm not your. I'll say some other things, but
Date for the night.
I'm on Facebook Live. So.
Yeah, but that's it.
Concubine
That's
is Facebook
interesting.
friendly.
though.
And they're real.
Concubine
Yeah.
is Facebook friendly. Thank you.
Yeah,
Paul.
and we have to raise those issues of the atmosphere of
Yeah.
the city or wherever is going to contribute to people's vulnerability, particularly people of color.
Particularly during specific events.
Yeah.
Mardi Gras.
I don't even know
Voodoo
why
Fest.
somebody Decadence. You right?
Decadence. We just talking about New Orleans events.
Yeah, yeah.
Big sporting event.
Big sporting events.
Super Bowls. Yeah,
Right.
big sporting events.
And I would say on the vulnerability part also, when you said French Quarter Fest, I took a Uber because of the traffic. No, it's Mardi Gras. Because of the traffic, I had to walk on Canal Street, cross the street before I could catch. Now we're talking 2-3 o'clock in the morning, so that's putting me at risk because they're not coming to the hotel where I am. I have to then go to them, and I did get another Uber who tried to get me in the car and was like, hey, I turned the meter off, I'll take you where you want to go, you just pay me cash under the table. And it was like, no. So sometimes when you have those events and the fact they can't pick you up at your location puts you in a very vulnerable place.
Right. And their willingness to turn off the meter also puts you in a vulnerable place because there's no checking now. There's no way to check addresses. There's no tracking. So that also makes you. So again, the economics comes into it because if you're thinking, oh, I only have to pay you $20.
And they were charging $40 because the traffic,
The surge also
$12
makes
to
people.
get down there, but $40 to get back because of the surge. Somebody offered me $20. I really am thinking about it,
Of course.
but I don't even know if you really are an Uber driver.
Yes.
So yeah, and there's no traffic right there.
Yes. So I just want to observe. Thank you to the new folks that have come into the conversation. So please feel free to be a part of the conversation. But also we have food, plant-based food, healthy food, local, Black woman-owned business. So it looks like there's only a couple teas left, I think. Fresh mint teas. No, maybe there's more than a couple. So just please make yourself at home. Yeah.
What I wanted to say is that I noticed that any and every type of vehicle is now or appears to be registered as Uber. I drive a 2002 Hyundai Santa Fe and it's beat up like a mug. And I saw a Trailblazer that was just as old and just as beat up that had an Uber sticker in it. And I'm saying,
It's supposed to be 2012 on out here, right?
Yeah.
I thought, like 10 years.
10 years.
More than 10 years old.
But it's easy to get an Uber sticker though. It's not difficult to get an Uber sticker.
and that's the point that I'm making.
Yeah, it's
so
not hard.
how do you validate the Uber sticker? Just because you have an Uber sticker in your vehicle doesn't necessarily mean that you're an Uber driver.
They give multiple like you can go across the street and they'll give you multiple because you can take them on and off. So one of the things that may help is that if there's like an actual tracking number, like with the Uber sticker that is given, so you won't have those multiple cars.
I think it would probably, even with that, it would be kind of weird with the tracking situation. Like, a lot of people don't like Big Brother. Although I laugh every time people talk about Big Brother. So like you walk around with a smartphone,
Yeah.
you're tracked regardless.
Yeah.
However, I think that would probably be a problem for people who, like almost like the good suffering for the bad
Yeah.
type situation.
There's no inspection.
There's no inspection.
Is that?
Oh, is there an expression of drivers?
You have to give your
Oh, the
And
cars,
they have
yes.
insurance and
Yes.
those things.
Yes.
you have to have those before you get on the road, and they will like cancel your Uber app until you can start driving again, until you upload it. So that part of it is accurate, but as far as getting the stickers, mama, like anybody, they give you multiple. Like the electrician guy was just like, no, the sewage and water boarder guy, I had the old sticker. He was just like, I see you drive Uber, you need a new one? You ain't supposed to have that, I got extra in my car. And he just came and just gave me like the new sticker. So it's so accessible, so you just have to be mindful of that whole shebang when you're doing it.
So that's really some of the conversations that Uber needs to know.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
it's internal.
Yes. Because these are things that I have not heard yet around these stickers being easy to get. That's new information.
It's a hustle in the city, baby.
Yeah, I know. You would think I live in
It's
New York, I
always
would
a
know
hustle.
these things, right?
Yeah.
But
By the way, this is the worst location to get an
this particular
Uber. This
The
area,
state-
yeah.
oh, really?
Oh,
Because they don't know with the office nearby. You're here, and you're trying to get Uber. We're gonna be looking at it like, we don't know if we're gonna take it. Yeah, so yeah.
Because the office is nearby.
Yeah, across the street.
Right across the street.
Did you know
So
that?
they're afraid they'll get someone who works there.
Not just that, I think they don't know. I don't know if they have anything like secret drivers or anything, but it's like they don't know what's like.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Do you
And it's like so interesting, like, well, it's right across the street. So then
they're able to have like, do they have the technology to see both like where people typically get picked up and also where like the location where people like ask for an Uber? Because going off what he said, if there's a correlation, like if there's a certain pattern of people are making an even number of requests in this area as opposed to this one, but nobody goes there. That could be a
Right. That's something that, I mean, I think with the, well, since they know where to pick you up and they know where to, and maybe Charity, you
I
would
think
know
where
this
to
better
take
than
you.
me, but is there a way to log where people are picked up and where people are dropped off?
In order to get more cars there, or
no.
I'm sorry, I was answering part of his question.
So, is there any data on, like,
Are you talking about what's on the cost of things?
I'm sorry,
Are you talking about the cost of things?
not the cost, but like the location of like where people are picked up, and like the locations where people make requests to get an Uber.
How frequently they get picked up? How people
Yeah, based on locations.
Oh,
Kind of
Like
you know,
Canal
right
Street.
here is busy at
Like,
five
yeah,
p.m.
everybody will go down Canal Street or maybe the French Quarter, Garden District, but it's
So-
like you said.
so-
but
so-
here,
yeah.
people can make just as many requests, or as
How
as
long does it take
frequently.
a 9-wall person versus a
Something
canal
like
person?
something like that.
Right.
Is there
Yeah, so
any
you're
way of?
looking at like how
So
long
they
it
could
takes
be-
you to get a ride if you request from here.
I guess not just I mean, I guess you could say ask how long, but yeah, that would be probably the best way of saying it too, because somebody will, I'm sure, hopefully, eventually picks the person up. But why do people in this area have to wait longer?
Than other people.
And what can you surmise from that?
Right. So for the people that just joined us, I want to give y'all a chance to jump into the conversation. So what we're talking about is how does Uber and rideshare in particular make people more vulnerable, right? How does it make riders more vulnerable, and how does it make drivers more vulnerable? So any thoughts on that? And you can just tell me your name. And so what are some of the factors? So we talked about people can be tracked. So if you see somebody leaving their house at 3 o'clock every day, or a student, like you were talking about, I think a lot of students take Uber, so then you can begin to track people's movements and things like that. But what other things make communities of color vulnerable? Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, what's your name? Rakita. Oh, Rakita. Okay. All right.
I first started catching Uber or any type of ride share on transportation in January this year.
Yes.
This so happened that my friend was very good. I was that experience.
Yes.
It wasn't an Uber, it was another one, but it was a ride share.
Mhm.
And just so happened that the man that I was going to a women's retreat in Mobile, Alabama. I wanted to leave my vehicle at my location where I lived at, and he picked me up. It just so happened this woman that picked me up, wife, attends the same church.
Oh, wow.
The church, so I was just lucky.
Uh-huh.
But by being my first time, like anything, I had some apprehension.
Okay.
Experience, I had a good experience. The man was very much a gentleman. But I just think my apprehension
got to me to pick me up. It's just having the unknown, you know. But like I said, my experience was very good with him. You know, everything about the experience was good. I had no problem with him. My daughter, who is now 17, she's taking Uber and different rideshare things before I did, and I'm always been concerned about it. I mean, it was the first time she took one, I was like terrified. But I mean, she didn't feel like it because I guess kids think they're invincible. But my concern was that, you know, I wanted her to be on the phone with me while she was in the vehicle. I couldn't get her because I was at another part-time job, so I couldn't pick her up. So she suggested that, you know, she take a ride share in order for her to get from her hair appointment back home. And, you know, I used my credit card, did all the things she told me to do to get the person there. But the whole time she was, you know, coming from her destination home, I just had a terrified experience because I was thinking, Lord, I have my child. I can't get to her, but I don't want her to be stranded where she's at. And, you know, we're trying this for the first time. So I think for me, it's just been unknown.
Yes.
And not knowing, just feeling a little apprehension about, you know, your child, even yourself, getting into a vehicle, you're not really knowing the person. But like I say, my experience is very good. Like I said, my daughter has did it several times. This is before she got a driver's license. She's driving now. And I just felt like I was just afraid of just the unknown. You know, it's almost like I felt like I was taking a risk. A risk that I, you know, wasn't sure I wanted to take. But I'm still trying to be open to the various modes of transportation, you know, that are available to me and, you know, my children if I need it. Because I am a single parent. And like I said, at that time when she did it, she wasn't driving. She didn't have a driver's license. So I was kind of like caught in a hard place because I didn't have anybody to pick her up because I didn't want to lose my job. But at the same time, I still want her to be able to get home safe.
And I think what's so important, especially, and I just want to repeat just in case some of the things you said weren't picked up because we had the air on at the time, but one of the things you talked about was that the concern about, again, not knowing who the driver is, not knowing who the other riders might be in the vehicle, but also one thing I think is important as we start to really talk about prevention, which WCN is really going to incorporate, really talking about prevention, stopping the things before they even happen, is this idea of invincibility. Because yes, young people do think they're invincible, so you might not be paying attention if they turn down, you might be on your phone, you might be not paying attention if they turn down an alley, or if something happens you can't give a report because you're not paying attention.
For a while on the phone, I'm not interrupting you.
Yes, no, you're fine.
You're so, you know, she used the word dramatic, but it's like,
Yeah.
you know, mom, you know, just chill out, you know,
Yeah.
overprotected, that's the word, you know, and I'm at my part-time night job, you know, second job, part-time night job, like in a dressing room, you know, working in the women's dressing room on the phone, you know, saying, you know, oh, have you made it home yet? Have you made it home yet? Have you made it home yet? And she's like, almost like laughing at me, not in a bad way, but like, you know, it's not that serious or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm telling her, as soon as you get out that car, as soon as you get home, I need you to call me. I need you to let me know that you made it in safely, you know. And I kind of feel, as a parent, you know, you always feel like you wonder if you're doing enough, but I you know, I didn't have anybody to get her. You know, I didn't want her to be stuck way out in New Orleans East, and I'm in Metairie trying to work and trying to get her home. But that's been my experience with it, like I said.
So also lack of support system I want to add too, because then you talked about it too. If you don't have people to take you where you need to go, pick you up, drop you off, lack of that support system can also make you vulnerable.
And also they have, because I know in Uber you're supposed to, the person who's requesting the ride is supposed to be the person that go on the ride, even though sometimes it's not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
So what if there was a parental feature where the parent in that account can call an Uber for their child and track the route? Like they can know who's dropping them off. They can track the route. Like you can do that. Or what if there was a parental feature to allow parents? Because like parents, sometimes you have single mothers, sometimes you have single fathers, and they may not be able to get everywhere, but they can call an Uber for their child. And they can actually, in real time, see their child's route or trip.
Well, maybe if that was a general feature, because you know how you can share your location on iPhone for an hour or indeterminately.
Well, no,
But I'm saying I wouldn't want to share with
there is a feature on Uber.
Yeah.
There is a feature.
Yeah.
So I don't know, because it's just me. I ain't got no kids.
You share it to your friend. No.
No,
You can send send your
Yeah.
other
Send your
stuff.
ETA.
Just so I send it to
So
my
let's
wife.
make sure we have one person at a time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
'Cause it's all good. It's just
No.
recording.
So that feature is actually on the thing. I was in New York last year around this time, dropping a friend of mine in New York, and I saw the feature pop up, and I sent it to my wife just like, because it was also late, so I knew she was up because I was just talking to her. So I sent it to her so she could follow my route. I just wanted to test it out.
It's like a little dot that
Yeah,
like pops up when you're
yeah.
driving. It'll let the driver know that your route is shared, and so the little dot will follow you the whole way or whatever. Whomever they don't tell you who they're sharing it with, but you know that person is sharing their route with somebody, and so that option
like that
is
part because it protects both people. It's like
Yeah.
you know you're being monitored, but it's also for the person
Yeah.
who is sharing. It's like you don't even know who I'm sharing it with, but you just know you also. It protects both sides. Yeah, that feature is there.
Hang on 1 second, because he had it, and then you. Thank
The
you.
other one is if someone's not familiar with the terrain, so it's like, is there a way to tell if the driver's trying to get one over on them by like taking a longer route, making circles and stuff like that?
So people are unfamiliar with the
With the
territory,
area,
the area.
and it's even worse, you know, if they're not from the country,
Right.
don't speak the language,
Right.
and limited communication with the driver.
Thank you. And then tell me your name.
Kevin.
Kevin. Okay, and then Cassandra. Okay, go ahead, Cassandra.
Okay, I have actually picked up a child support. And so whereas the mother was actually able to see where I was going. So it is actually on the app. You can
Well,
track.
that's when that's when I'm calling this phone. That's when I'm using my account. Like I do it. My cousin runs my photo booth business for me. So I call Ubers for her all the time to get her from her house uptown to the location of the photo booth that I've already set up. It's through my account, so I know everything about it because it's as if I'm in the car. But it's not me, it's her. Because I may be on another job and I gotta send an Uber for her to get there because she doesn't have a vehicle.
You think
That's
they
when it's
accept
followed.
you
But,
as female?
hmm?
You think they accepted you because you're female?
Yeah.
I mean, I live in Metairie, it's
But that-
common in Metairie,
but it's not-
that they will actually put their children in the home.
Yeah.
And have, bring them to the movies, bring them to the
Yeah.
festivals, bring them, you know, for Mardi Gras, it was the first time I took a child during Mardi Gras. And he was going, it was a 7-year-old girl. And of course it made me really uncomfortable.
Exactly.
It's acceptable.
Yeah.
Right, but it was, you know, I had the whole conversation with the mom and everything, she explained it to me.
Nice.
And it wasn't that far, it was like a 5 to 10 minute drive from where they were. But it was an idea she was able to track, because when we got to the location, he could remember his mom's celebrating. So I'm up here going, okay, wait, I don't see the people she said were gonna be at the gate.
Mm-hmm.
And here it is, he doesn't remember mom's number. Luckily, mom was looking at the phone and realized I had moved. So she actually ended up calling me going, did y'all get lost? I'm like, yes, your son is having a little issue here because we don't see the move that he's coming in with.
Mm-hmm.
And then her comment was, oh, just let him go ahead and get out the car and he'll find me enough. And I'm like, no.
Because then what happens if,
Yeah.
if
That
something happens
becomes
and then you're
liable
the
to-
last person?
Yeah, but like I said, I think that situation is different because I'm the owner of the account. And I can track it, but like, I'm not sure who picked up, but Malik, I think that it needs to be a parental account. Like I have a Hulu and Netflix account. And I have, so like, you know, we share it with my friends, but there's a section on there for the Homegirls Godchild in Houston and a kids section for my kids. That they only go to that. It's password protected. The other ones are password protected for the adults. And this parental advisory is on these, so they can't even get into it unless they have a password for any of their accounts. So there's a parental one for my kids. And that's the only station you can go to on Netflix. It's all kids stuff. It's all PG-13 and under. So I think, yeah, there needs to be a situation like that because of single parents, or you know, I might just like it might be a Mardi Gras situation where I'm out with my 13, 14 year old. But if I'm out with them, but then it's around that time, it's like, okay, now I want to go out with my friends. I need to see you back home. And I'm not trying to leave from out on this and gotta come back. I'm about to call you a ride and you going home. You know, like I can track it.
Well, I also pick up children, whereas the mother
Yeah, that's
is
what
not
that 7-year-old know when
there.
you
And right, I pick up some like 12-year-olds, 11, 12-year-olds.
Yeah, I
But
picked
they
up
were going
12-year-olds.
to- They were going to their school for festival that they had. They had their own credit card that the mom, that the parents had set up for them to be, and they just called them. And it was on their credit card. And I'm going, I was uncomfortable because there was no doubt between me. I'm not going to communicate with my because all my was like, oh no, we go all the time. You know, my parents go out and I'm going,
'Cause they
this
do.
child would be at home punished, can't go anywhere. But yet still they call it Uber and put it on their credit card.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, it's priorities. No,
I knew from the beginning, but go ahead.
that's their priorities.
But you're right.
I wish.
It is.
But not necessarily.
True. Not necessarily. However,
That is very uncomfortable.
how's it?
Yeah.
The general.
There's a lot of things.
She said that.
And Metairie is out of control.
I knew that from the jump.
I picked up kids from Metairie when they left their parents' house drunk. And the parents have come outside and said, all right, y'all have a good time.
Oh.
And you get in the car and they're all like getting their fake IDs together to go hit up whatever club down there off of Chapatulas. I feel you. It's wild out there, Metairie boo. It's wild out there.
So,
It's wild out there.
Yep.
Order.
Yep.
They got fake IDs.
Okay, so we talked about rape culture, what Uber needs to know about rape culture. Snow gave us a dope definition of what rape culture is. Paul followed it up with some great information, right, about what rape culture is, what Uber needs to know at just sort of a baseline level. And so one of the things that we talked about in other cities was, one, they need to know that it exists, that it's a real thing, it's not something that's in our head, and that it impacts every walk of life. One of the other things that Snow talked about was that rape culture doesn't just affect women, it affects men as well, and gender non-conforming folks. So what is their corporate responsibility then around rape culture? Because we've talked about the things that make us vulnerable. We talked about what they need to know. Burns, you're a corporate responsibility person. That's like your middle name. So, so what do you think their corporate responsibility around rape culture and consent is?
To protect any and everyone who uses their service, whether they're the driver, the passenger, the parent of the child getting in the car, people in society, anything that's connected to Uber, they have the right, or should have the right, of ensuring the greatest safety and protection for all parties involved. Nothing less.
Okay. Somebody else? What's their corporate responsibility around rape culture? Yeah.
Definitely the training and retraining
Yep.
on what are the principles, as well as what are the responsibilities of the driver, and also marking about what is the responsibilities of the users. We go through in my field many trainings over and over again. However, it is necessary to make sure that, because honestly, everyone's not going to follow the rules of the trainings, but it needs to be stated that we did our responsibility in making sure that they were trained.
Is feedback accessible about a driver to like someone who hasn't requested that driver before? So beyond just like you can see beyond just like however many stars 1 to 5. So you can see if there's like a trend in like if there are certain keywords that are brought up, like this guy hits on me all the time. This person, it's like I've told them to stop and they just to stop talking or something. They just don't respect my wishes. So, and then also to help filter out the BS ratings, which are solely based on I just didn't like the personality. or something. But if there's something genuinely there, there's going to be a repeat pattern, or hopefully you catch it before it becomes a pattern.
Okay. I do have one answer for your question as I said earlier,
Yeah.
the new information that just came out today. So I'm gonna roll that out and then I'll get to you, Snow. So this is like a good Uber commercial. It's not really a commercial, but I just I'm reading it because literally I just got it this morning and I don't want to get it wrong. So in response to a lot of the things that we've discussed here and different things that are happening around the country, Uber has taken some really important next steps on how they're going to move forward, how they're partnering with my organization and other organizations. They're really already putting some of these things into place. And so one of the things that they are incorporating now is transparency. So what they're doing now is they're going to start publishing safety transparency reports that will include data on sexual assaults and other safety incidences that occur on the Uber platform in the US. Going further, we'll work to open source our taxonomy and methodology developed in partnership with experts so we can encourage others in the travel and transportation industry to take this step too. So that's sort of one huge step towards transparency. And then we talked about this because Kyndra was nice enough to have Stephanie and I on her radio show this afternoon. And so we talked about this other important piece about arbitration, and maybe you can elaborate on it a little, because what you said I think this afternoon was really important. So we'll no longer require Uber riders, drivers, or employees to arbitrate their individual claims of sexual assault or harassment. Moving forward, they will be free to choose to resolve their individual claims in the venue they prefer, in a mediation where they can choose confidentiality, or in arbitration where they can choose to maintain their privacy while pursuing their case, or in open court. Whatever they decide, they're going to be free to do that, which is super important. So you want to talk about why?
Right, because if you go to arbitration, it is not, as a company, you don't have to disclose it. And they choose, typically, the company chooses who does the mediation, which means you have no input in that. And so things are negotiated, right? And so the public would not know, it cannot be discussed, what happened, who's gone. And so for me, that's an important step because it gives the voices to the person who has been wronged, and they can then choose what is best for them. If it goes to open court, if they get to choose who's the mediator, or if they follow Uber. So having that voice is instrumental in any of these cases. So I applaud Uber for that. That was huge.
And then the last thing is around confidentiality. So they're giving survivors of sexual assault and harassment the option to reach a settlement with Uber without a confidentiality requirement, covering the facts of their experience, whether to find closure, seek treatment, or become advocates for change themselves. Survivors will be in control of whether to share their stories or not, which I think is really key. And we do have questions in here. The two last questions are about restorative justice, which I think are important conversations to have in communities of color, in particular around restorative justice, bringing people back to wholeness after harm has happened. And I feel we as a community should be able to say what justice looks like to us. So we'll address those two things. Those will be the last two questions that we'll talk about. But any other corporate responsibilities? So they've already taken some steps as of today, which is exciting. Anything else?
One thing I would add is,
You just I didn't fill out my photo release.
It is hard to, I mean, obviously there is the call 911, right?
Yeah.
When there's an emergency. But Uber makes it extremely difficult and challenging to ever contact them for anything. Because if you don't have access to a computer, and then it's an email that you don't know where it goes and where you're going to get a response. And so I believe as part of their responsibility, if we're talking about transparency, there's also needs to be accessibility. They need to be accessible to this society and community.
That's right. Absolutely. Yes.
That's actually what I was going to say. I was going to say that in that little script of options that they do give you to report a problem and things like that, reporting things like over flirtatiousness or negative music or music that makes one feel uncomfortable happening in the car and stuff like that. Like those need to be options that, like, I think think it's their corporate responsibility to have those things as specific options, because if you don't even have it available as, because they have so much other stuff, and you don't even have that, then you can't get in contact with your specific problem. And yeah, I think it's their responsibility to explicitly put those options on there to report those things. So like, I mean, I've had a couple of Uber drivers try to get my number and stuff like that. I mean, like, it wasn't my choice to ride with this particular person. I just had to end up in the car with him. So to make that kind of forward move, it's like I'm in the car with this person and you just put me in a little bit of a situation. Of course, I can say no, but what if there are more forceful people out there, or if there are other girls who, feel pressure to be
So I have a question, because flirtation and stuff I can understand about the professionalism behind that, but when it comes down to offensive music, which that's a wide scope that could be in, like in ride sharing, what is the responsibility of the driver and what is the responsibility of the rider? Because I asked a question one time for somebody in the ride sharing who did ride sharing, and it was like, oh, that person can play whatever music they want to play. It's their car. So I'm not too sure if that's true. I don't know if it's that the policy, but that's what I was told by somebody who worked for a company. I don't know if it was Uber, that this person could play whatever music, but you're the person asking for the ride from the person, and even though you're paying, it's still their vehicle. So I don't know, and even though they may have music that for some people may be offensive, for other people it may not be. So I didn't know. But so my thing is, I talk about the other responsibility, but I also talk about my responsibility. Like, is this a policy? Is this something is this something I want to be subjected myself or my kids, whoever too? I need to know that, because if it is a policy, I need to know. I can't go in somebody's car and be like, yo, I need to change to XYZ station,
But I do think there needs to be something, because I'm going to tell you what, I've been in cars where people were high. When I was in California last year, the guy was high, and he was taking me to Whole Foods, and he like almost missed the parking lot. When I was in LA a couple of weeks ago, the lady ran up on the curb. One person at the listening session said somebody pulled over, gave themselves a breathalyzer. So she pulled over and gave herself a breathalyzer. Right, so there has to be, and I have gotten in cars where people have played, they've been playing trap music, and I don't mind, okay, but I also feel like if I wasn't a black woman, would you feel like, are you playing trap music when people who aren't black are in the car? Like, do you think I really want to be called all different kinds of things that are not my name while I'm actually paying you? So I feel like there has to be some sort of standard, like at least don't be high when you're driving me, and don't pull over and do breathalyzers. Like, there has to be, I just feel like there has to be some standard.
Don't ask me to do the breathalyzer for you.
What is missing as it relates to a cab driver? I mean, there are certain requirements that you have to follow to be a cab driver. So that's why cab drivers have a problem with Uber and Lyft drivers, because they're not.
Because they're subcontractors, I think is what.
But their standards should be the same, just like at my job. I can't sit in my office and have students coming in and I'm playing, I'll be stroking, on the radio or
that's
something
what
like
I've been
that.
doing.
I can't do that. So not that I want to, but after work, whatever I do is my business.
Right.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't even want to think that I'm seeing a counselor or someone who, likes that kind of thing. But I can't do that in my office.
It sounds real silly, but it almost seems like there could be like a selection. It's like to put on your Uber profile as a driver, as yours as a customer. Could you almost kind of weed out and say like, hey, I actually do like these kinds of music. So okay, besides the name.
I don't know if they still have
That's
it.
a very, that's
beginning,
a huge request, but it's like, what if you just selected, hey, I like these kinds of music.
Yeah, at the very beginning.
Don't get too specific.
Well, no, and they give you an option. I'm sorry, Malik. They give you, like, when you first sign up, they tell you, or Spotify or Pandora, and you check the ones that you like. And then on your profile, you're supposed to be able to pull that up. Like, but I've gotten in the car and I had on smooth jazz, and I got some kids in the car. They'd be like, put on some Drake. I want to hear some trap. So and I'm just like, and so they come and they make requests, and they think, cause you don't play no reggae, cause I got lots.
it's a difference between
You
them.
got no,
Here's the like
I
they,
got no weed.
They gonna start.
I get that a lot.
like they can't demand what you play, but they should be able to at least. You should know what I mean. Like I guess know what they like so far as they don't feel uncomfortable or threatened. I
Yeah.
don't think people are feeling uncomfortable or threatened with smooth jazz playing. So if they
But they come
complain
in, they
about
change
that,
it. They want.
if they
want
complain
something
about it,
else.
that's their problem.
I mean, you can ask. I mean, I've had certain drivers say, "Hey, do you want music on?
Yes.
What type
That
of
kind of
music?"
stuff. Yeah,
I mean, I've had
exactly.
some drivers. I mean, they have mints and like that. I'm like, okay, well, damn, what is this? You know? So I mean, it depends on every driver have.
I have it
and I'm
on
sorry,
too.
every driver have different experience.
Yeah.
And you know, some people go the extra mile for customer service, and they get that 5 stars, and they're lucky. Just recently, I just gave a tip to somebody. I don't know what they did, but it was worthy of a tip. So I'm just saying, yeah.
I
So,
was
yeah.
tipping before it was legal to tip. Some drivers usually be like, you know what, you too cold at this job.
Yeah.
So I gotta do something.
Yes.
Do that everything on the back seat.
Yes. But now that I know that it goes with your profile, I may need to check my Spotify profile. That
Yeah,
might be
your-
why I'm
your
getting that.
Pandora-
Maybe you're
it's
giving them the
Pandora as
wrong
well.
impression.
Clearly.
Yeah, it's-
That's me.
Yes, why don't you check on it?
Go ahead.
I drive my own vehicle, so I don't do Uber locally. But I'm not sure of what type of, like, you have professional development, continual professional development for drivers.
Yes.
Is there like a newsletter or some kind of blog or whatever for riders as well? Informing riders of changes
and policy.
and policies and their behavior, or, you know, ratings are 2 ways. So if you have a rider that's belligerent and has several complaints, you know, how does Uber deal with them?
Can you rate them?
Yeah, you can rate the riders.
Is it just a
Right.
rating, or do you get to also
But I'm
leave
saying,
feedback
you
too?
know, keeping that like on the
If you don't
forefront,
give them
and
a
even
5,
in
then they'll
terms
ask you
of
why.
Okay.
the
Yeah.
drivers who may have complaints or whatever, having secret riders or whatever get in with them to, you know, check them out and see how they're, you know, how they're doing, what they're doing.
That would be
things
one thing
like
that I would like to see.
And also incentivize drivers as well as riders, you know,
Yeah.
for various actions
I like that.
or inactions.
Mm-hmm.
You could have,
I
you
was
know,
like 4.56.
What?
My rating.
Oh,
should
thank
be
you.
5 stars.
What did you do?
Yeah, as a customer.
But the other thing I wanted to say about that, because like I said, I don't do Uber,
Mine
but
is
when I was in
4.999.
DC, my friends would
Driving.
call a ride for me, and they would just assume that I was her, so I would get in. So if I'm an act of butt, I could be influencing her
Right.
points or her whatever
Yeah.
on there. So being conscious of that. The other thing was I was tripped out because I wasn't familiar with the actual multi-ride shit.
Right.
Where I'm thinking I'm getting in an Uber. Okay. Oh wow, this is fine. I'm gonna. But we ended up picking up like 3 or 4 other people,
Yes.
and it was going all over everywhere else before I eventually got dropped off. And at one point, we were in a neighborhood that we were all like,
Hey, bro.
this seemed like a setup. You know, like, you know, we need to get up out of here. And we couldn't find the person. They like, I'm in the alley. You know, it's like, but there's construction. I'm thinking about getting boxed in and all of that.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it's those kinds of things too, you know, the driver having the discretion to, like, I'm sorry, you have to call somebody else.
Yeah.
I'm not, you know, and that not affect. But then again, that goes to, you could get into like racial profiling or whatever. Like I ain't,
Yeah.
But we don't get the picture of the person though from the driver's side.
don't.
We don't get who you are.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Oh.
We don't get a picture. You guys get a picture of us.
Oh, yeah.
But we don't get a picture, so that would help for our side we don't get up. So when you roll up to the door, we're just like,
That's why y'all be asking.
yeah, Tom, Paul, Joseph.
And then you
I mean,
say,
That's
yeah,
my name.
but you're
That's my
not.
Yeah.
Joseph.
You're Ben.
And then if you're not,
They should be asking for your picture.
but what they usually, a lot of people, they check my license plate.
Yes. That's
And then I get people who look at my profile picture and be like, "You look like the person,"
Yeah.
and then they eventually get in the car, but we don't see who the people are. And then you do have an opportunity to rate the person, rate the individual, and then like if you decide not to pick a person up, you can say cancel the ride, and then they'll ask reasons why you're canceling the ride, charge the rider, don't charge the rider, was the rider not there, da 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 da. So you have all these different things, but I think if we can get a picture and how many people coming in our cars, that would be great.
Yeah.
Because you may have Sue, and Sue may have 8 girls.
Yeah.
Can you fit us all? And you're like, no.
So we got a few more minutes. I want to make sure I respect y'all's time. So yes.
Is there a way, I'm just coming up with like different things.
Yes.
Is there a way like if you have like a Uber card, so when and you can scan it, like this is the Uber. I'm Vera, so I get in your Kyndra's vehicle, and Kyndra can, like the barcodes or whatever, you can scan my card, and it says that is me, and vice versa. So you know that that's the person that you have. The other thing that I thought about was I've been watching late night infomercials where they have the camera,
So
where
it's
the
a good start
camera
to
that you
Yes.
can put up like a, yeah, and record everything.
They have those
Bless you.
taxis.
Yeah.
A lot of them have
Bless you.
taxis.
But I think they're selling them now for $49.95 plus shipping and handling. And the special offer,
You wanna plug
they'll
the
give
company?
you 2. They'll give you 2.
Bless you.
Yes, back here.
Want to plug the name of the company?
Let's say separate shipping and handling.
No, it's fine. Yes.
I had a situation where my gentleman in which when you're driving and it's a lot of activity, sometimes you're not even connected to the app.
Bless you.
He actually canceled the ride within 2 blocks of his house, of us leaving his house. And he kept saying, if you just take me to the ATM, I'll give you cash. But and it wasn't even no get out of my car. He was like, no, I promise I'll give you cash. Get out of my car. I promise, cash, I'll give you cash. I promise I'll give you extra. But it was me stop. I had to stop in the middle of the street with cars behind me because, of course, it's my safety event.
Yes.
So if cars are blowing their horn behind me, it is what it is. Until you get out of the car, because
Yeah.
he had the opportunity to cancel because when the night dropped, it was so busy and so much activity going on in the quarters that it never 100% connected on his side. So he was able to cancel it prior to it actually canceled, even though it showed on my side. But as soon as he canceled, then it showed that he canceled it.
Wow.
Like I never picked him up.
Wow.
And he was still in the car. And he was still in the car. And that was major.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe maybe something for you, for the driver saying, did the person, is the person still in your car? I don't know. Like, there's a double.
Right, but if it shows that I never picked him up,
Right.
then yeah.
Then anything can
Right.
happen. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. So thinking about restorative justice, thinking about justice, bringing justice to situations, what would we like to see in the cases of the sexual assaults that are happening? So beyond arbitration, beyond confidentiality, beyond those things that were released today, what else would we like to see the company do?
Beyond that,
Well, you
I mean,
can't.
I'm sorry. I know it's
Basically,
a company,
yeah.
but definitely compensation. You have to, if you are over something and someone is assaulting on your time, and it's like you don't have proper oversight, then you should compensate those victims.
It's like a predator's like.
Yeah, you should compensate
Like-
those victims.
Playground.
Whatever, because honestly, you don't never know what that brings to do somebody physical, emotional, mental, or psychological space, and how that's going to affect them in the long haul.
So what would compensation look like? Spell it out. All the different, because compensation can be so many things. So,
Compensation looks like, for a story, look like therapy.
okay.
Compensation looks like financial, because you never know. This person may lose their job because they
That's
can't
right.
handle the thoughts of being
There
assaulted.
you go.
Free Ubers for the rest of their life. I don't know, like, yeah, but no, I don't know if they want to do Uber
That's
after
right.
being sexually
Yeah.
assaulted. So
I'm sure what about
yeah,
What about the medical?
medical.
Why should they have to go to the doctor, do the rape kit, and all that kind of stuff, and all that stuff?
Well, victim crime victims aren't billed for
And also,
anything. For a rape kit, victims aren't billed for anything like that.
but other medical
Other
charges.
medical that they
Yeah,
make.
so the mental medical, then that's certain, but even with certain situations, there, like now that's where anything. A lot of times, if you're the victim of something on the rape side, the medical part of it isn't billed to you. So
I think it depends on the state.
It also
I think it depends on who the victim is. And
Yeah.
especially in this current climate, a lot of people don't know about victim compensation. A lot of states don't enforce victim compensation. So let's say more about that though then. If we know that, hang on one second, if we know that those monies are available, what can we do, like victim compensation, which I think is what you were talking about, what can we do to make that available?
That's a NOPDSVU.
A what?
NOPDSVU situation. It's called it's
Police
New
Department,
Orleans,
Special
yeah,
Victim.
Police Department Special Victim Committee or something like that. I gotta get the correct information, but I know for certain stuff like counseling up to a certain point, rape kits and all that type of stuff are covered.
So I'm thinking about compensation. Could Uber make sure that information was available to people publicly? Like if this happens to
I
you,
think so.
this is where you can go. Because a lot of victims also don't know about this stuff.
Partnering with, if such situation, they have set partners in locales for counseling, not to persuade that person, but like, hey, these are some identified counseling resources. Actually, we're not too far from, I guess, a women's center. So where can they go where they can feel safe, that is not partisan,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and they can feel like they can talk about what had happened and kind of work through it?
I
Hang
mean,
on one second, Paul. Go ahead, Snow, and then I'll come back to you.
I was just going to mention briefly, especially for trans people, especially for trans women and men, or just like trans people of color.
Yes.
Those medical things get complicated.
Yes.
I don't know why those laws get messed up or why people try to mess over those people, but especially when it comes to, like I know that there's an emergency medication that you can take in order to prevent yourself from getting AIDS if you get raped and stuff like that. Sometimes that may cause.
That's for pregnancy.
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 But that is it's
Prep. Isn't it
Prep.
prep?
Yeah, so like things like PrEP and like the testing and stuff like that for trans people, like they might not have the specific resource or the specific place that's like friendly to their community, or like will actually give them those services for free, especially if they don't have insurance because of whatever they may be going through. So
Especially around trans issues, and also immigrant folks issues also with immigration and sort of your paperwork. It's again in this climate, like your birth certificate says you are a female, you are calling yourself
that also people might.
Malcolm. Those are issues, so those are other things that have to be addressed when people are going for medical.
People
You and then you.
people who've been prisoners are also vulnerable because like how can we keep you
Prisoners?
yeah. Well, people
Former inmates.
who is their credibility is questioned because of time spent. So I mean that goes in all the other
Yes.
lines as well. But what was the other thing? Because therapy, as much as it's needed, like if it's out of the way, people won't seek the treatment. So especially like if free rides unlimited is not offered, free rides to the therapy, free rides to those places, the healthcare facilities, should be like that should just be a given. And because paying for these other things, because there's no gain from making it a fraud. So I think it's a relatively foolproof compensation.
But even with that type of situation, I think you would. It would be kind of weird for me, like if I was a victim of an assault of any kind, to kind of still go with the company
Yeah.
that is happening. But I
Yeah.
think, and I'm not discrediting what you're saying. I think we need to add something to that. I think it needs to be a situation where, like I work with juvenile justice department in the city, and so with certain young people, they have to call someone like me in because I was an actual juvenile prisoner at one point. And so with a young person, so they can call someone like if Malik works there, he can only deal with a young person to a certain point.
Right.
Because he doesn't know that pain because he's never been incarcerated as a young kid. But he would have to call them and be like, hey, with his situation, with Derek's situation, we gotta call him Kevin Fam. Because he knows the situation, he's like versed in it. Not even from a personal standpoint, but like it might be a situation where, you know, there's all sorts of Uber drivers. Like I know nurses that are Uber drivers, counselors, all that. So it might be a situation where we identify with what a person does for their career, and maybe if it's a situation like that, they're like starred as someone that would go pick that person up. So it's not just a regular, like if a lady got raped or sexually assaulted in some fashion and Uber pays for a ride, I wouldn't want to be the guy picking her up. Like, because just sensitivity wise, she doesn't want to deal with a guy.
Yes.
She doesn't want to deal with me at all. So like, with anyone of my gender, so it's like I wouldn't want to pick her up, and I'm pretty damn sure she wouldn't want me to pick her up.
Yeah.
Like that triggers and stuff like that. So I think it needs to be with someone that is like Uber specified. Uber and a community partner specifies that is trained in this area, and maybe that person gets a specific stipend for this pickup and things like that.
What about a different level of driver where this person has gone through the extra training to say like, look, this person is legit. They're not just any Uber driver, because you know more or less anybody can sign up for that. This person has gone through even more training, specifically through us, partnered with you know some of these others.
Uber SBU.
Oh, but but those
So, like some type of designation.
Like you
A
special
person who
victims.
was and that's what I wanted to get in while we talking about a victim restorative base, a narrative. I think we should also talk about what is Uber's responsibilities in a community that they find themselves in, dealing with patriarchy, dealing with. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's true. So many responsibilities.
Yeah.
Bam.
Okay, for communities. Okay, so that's what I was going to get to. I'm sorry, I overstepped myself. Okay.
We're back on that other page too.
Legal fees.
Very expensive.
Yes. All right.
Thank you, Mama.
Our communities.
So, because I've had a lot of different Uber drivers, everybody know me. I bike. If I'm got to get somewhere very far, I'm gonna Uber. So, I have a plethora of Uber drivers. Some of them are not necessarily from New Orleans. Some of them have just, like, when I say recent, like, oh, I just got to New Orleans a week or two ago or whatnot. So how do once again, we talk about training and stuff, but how do, as a company, acclimate their drivers to the community that they're driving in when they're not necessarily a part or from the community?
Let me reframe that for you, because we're talking about what we want to see.
Right.
So instead of saying how would you like to see that happen?
Oh, wow.
What would you like to see?
Boom. Boom.
I was like, want to help me with this, Paul?
I think sessions like these is a start, right? And those sessions can be, listening sessions to get feedback, but it could also be, meet the community, or we're gonna do education around safety and rideshare. We're gonna have
It's about education.
mental therapy and stuff that's gonna come and talk to you about it, and it's gonna be sponsored by Uber. Now we're really getting into the community and really getting deep. We want to introduce you to the driver, so maybe once a month they have a community or an Uber, some meet the staff. I don't know, I'm just throwing out stuff, right? But I think that face-to-face, and if you really want to take a stand on sexual assault and violence and preventing it, then you need to be the one leading the way of what prevention looks like. And so whether it's a monthly session, training, education,
and also partnering with what's already there in the community, talking about these issues, those organizations for women. Also, I know
Partnering with
that
those organizations,
the private institutions, Loyola, Dillard, Tulane, they have with their Take Back the Night events that they do annually,
Right.
and they do together, which they talk about this type of these issues and justice, working with people who are already doing this type, and also exposing their drivers to this education, like you
Yes.
said. So these
Yes.
sessions of what, because like you say, some of them may not have never been taught this, may never been educated about this.
Exactly.
So having that training and those opportunities for them to get that information, so they can.
It should
Yeah.
and it should be an ongoing, and listening to your drivers, because your drivers,
Yeah.
such as the ones here in the room,
Right.
have so much input. But where, I mean, from what I'm understanding, there's not a lot of sharing.
And when we talk about the victims, also talk about a driver who could be assaulted.
Right.
Or because so that's how drivers being assaulted, drivers who are being talking about that as well. And how can they be more safe as well?
Well, and I think that we're talking
Machetes.
about Uber drivers like they're like these separate people, but Uber are in our families. Like we're all
Yeah.
like, she's my sister, right? You're an Uber. Your Uber isn't some tower somewhere with people that aren't accessible. So the same things that I want for myself as a rider, I should want for the drivers as well. So they should be central to these conversations also.
Yeah, because I would say what has happened in Uber could have, the whole part about just stopping, but could have been prevented had they listened to their drivers. Because I did an informal survey with drivers all over the U.S., and the things that they told me, you just go, and why are you not telling the people in your office? Oh, because no one listens. So you have to listen, and that goes back to there needs to be a number where people can report, even in the community, if they see reckless behavior, if they see someone they feel is, and maybe it's 911, I don't know, but they need to promote whatever that is. So if I'm in the community and I'm seeing like, oh my God, this drunk person just got into this Uber and they're fighting with the driver, I'm outside, but I'm a witness to this, then I should be able, and again, maybe it is the police, but they need to promote that as a community member, you too can be involved in what say something, see something, say something. So it's not just the person who gets in the car, not just the driver.
Well, you came up with the slogan, see something, say something. Call this number.
That's taking
And she want her check too.
Well,
okay. It's taken. I was trying to help you out. Restore the justice.
Interviews is important when we're talking about prevention. We do a lot of this when we talk about work that's being done with men and boys around bystanders, supporting people, because a lot of times people don't say anything because they also don't know what to say, or they're afraid of being targeted themselves. So, but all these things, there's going to need to be trust built in the community.
because your drivers are they're your advertising.
Yeah.
And things have shifted. I can tell you now that because I'm still doing the informal survey, is that they've shifted in that people are saying, hey, Uber is getting better. Whereas for about a year and a half, they would tell you don't go with Lyft.
Yeah.
I drive for both, but I don't even bother with Uber. So you just gotta listen.
It would be nice if riders were able to select whether or not they're comfortable with the female and willing to wait that extra time
Yep.
versus whoever's the first bill.
Yep.
Now, from a woman perspective, I never thought about that, but you're right.
Right, it would be nice, because if it's a situation too, whereas, someone has been assaulted and they're uncomfortable, then hey, they still need to get around, they still need transportation, so therefore, select female driver.
All kinds of yellow.
And I've heard that before. I've heard that before.
Yeah.
They were talking about that.
So or someone that you have already experienced before, that
Yes.
you enjoyed, it was a nice communication, you felt very comfortable, you didn't select that person again.
I get that. People want to know, can they re-request you?
Right, I have people that go ahead
Yeah.
Can we request you?
And I just have
true.
your number so you can just come back.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd rather that.
I've had that a lot too.
Because they're comfortable in that situation.
Absolutely. All right, folks. It's like 7:35. Do you have anything else you want to add? Any last comments? Anything that you feel like wasn't said? And because I don't want to leave here and then y'all think, I wish I had said.
We'll just call you.
Okay, I'll make sure I give you my card so you can call me. That's true though. I have my cards with me, so you can definitely contact me. But is there
Shameless
anything
plug.
else?
Shameless plug.
It's all good. Yes.
What I thought about was, and again, I'm not familiar with the Uber world, but in terms of like crime stats in the police department that says how many auto thefts, how many rapes, how many assaults, how many and then also how they sometimes downgrade certain crimes so that it doesn't look so bad to the public. I'm thinking in terms of Uber having multiple reports of different things that's happening, but they're not they don't want to spook people or create a climate where their riders are uncomfortable or whatever, so they don't say certain things or they don't provide certain safeguards or mental notes. Okay, Uber values your business, and we want to keep our drivers and our riders safe. Therefore, we suggest that you do this, and give the riders,
what to do,
information,
tips on what to do.
regular. And then in terms of like the sexual assault and different things, if Uber subcontracts with other service providers that will provide counseling or even create safe spaces such as this, where people can come and share and talk about, their experiences and stuff. Because I know across there they do a lot of stuff with drivers.
Yeah.
That's where the driver center is, and they do lunch and snowballs and all kind of other
Ice
little,
cream.
stuff for them. They need to also have situations for their riders as well. Door prize, whatever to just get more surveys. If it's nothing but surveys,
Yes. So I want to first respond about that report. So that's part of the information that came out today. That going forward, they will be releasing those transparency reports about things that happen. So that piece is coming. But what I would like to add is, how are those reports going to be distributed? I think that's something that we need to talk about. Like, how are people going to get them, especially communities of color and other. So this is a note for myself, and I'm just saying it out loud. But that's something we need to figure out, right? Because what good is this report if it's being distributed on a listserv that nobody in this room has access to? Hang on one second. The other piece I want to add, because she's taking notes, so I just want to make sure. Yeah. So the other piece I want to add is that when you talk about safe spaces, and even when you talk about providers, and the other gentleman talked about providers, I would also say that those providers need to be people of color.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to we've already addressed white supremacy and patriarchy and all those other things. So we also want to make sure that we're centering the voices of people of color. Spaces like this one, supporting communities like this one, I think those things need to be central also. Yes.
I just want to say, great session about restorative justice. I can't really talk about it because I'm not an expert in that. But I will also say you should definitely partner with local nonprofits and people on the ground doing things with restorative justice in this issue, local, not national, but people in the community, as well as identify certain places such as New Orleans, which are definitely a tourist city, but also there's a huge cultural and historical information that there's no education that they give or education to their drivers, and utilizing such services like No Nola Tours, which is a small black businesses, to educate drivers and with some type of cultural and historical competency as they drive people around New Orleans and all of these questions that people are probably looking towards them to answer, and they have no knowledge or no base of getting them an understanding of what New Orleans is or what it was. Because I know there was one Uber driver experience that one of my good friends told me about, where this Uber driver berated local New Orleanians because she thought nobody in the car was from New Orleans, and she pretty much, this driver talked so highly about people coming into New Orleans and changing it for the better. And she did not know my friend was a native New Orleanian. Yeah, she was like, oh, the city has changed. It's wonderful. It's safe. You can go to neighborhoods now, and we have restored these homes, and pretty much talking about gentrification.
Yes.
And then when my friend opened her mouth and said, well, I'm from New Orleans,
Yes.
the whole, well, she's like, oh, I didn't mean it like that. So having that type of cultural competency in driving and understanding what's going on in New Orleans and that historical groundwork. And no tourists can do that.
Well, and I just want to say too, the next part of this conversation, and maybe this is something for us to follow up with as well, because I love this idea of local partners.
That's from the construction
And
side.
so it's great for me as a national person to come in and have these conversations. But how much more powerful for the next level of funding to have us national organizations partner with the local organizations and create something powerful, right? So it's like, so
It's
the
the
local
same
folks
on
are getting
Uber.
the money, exactly. So I can go, but there's a local
Provide
here
a
in
list.
New Orleans continuing to do this
Provide
work.
a list for both drivers and riders, like a list of organizations that Uber's recruited, such as yours. Yeah, to reach out if they want to reach out to you first before confronting Uber on their own.
So a safe
We've
space
heard that
before
before.
they even go to
heard that
before they go to
Offer,
the
Yeah.
make sure to give out your guys' information.
Yeah, we've heard that before too. Yeah,
That'd be helpful.
yeah. I don't know who has their hand up, but
I
somebody
did.
just
I
go.
just wanted to. I thought about Uber being aware of hackers. How hackers can take your account and all
okay.
kind of stuff. You know, like skimmers and stuff. People could swipe. You know,
yeah.
how are you safeguarding drivers and riders against hackers that could send signals that could take your, like I had a friend who just had her credit card used in California by people doing taking Uber rides, charging to
Wow.
her account.
Wow.
So her credit card was compromised, but it was being used by somebody in California, however they got it, and was charging $15 rides here, $10, you know, like that. So just being mindful of the whole hacking industry and how that could create unsafe conditions as financial problems for people.
Ms. Riki? Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I just have
Last
a question.
words.
Yeah, I just have that question about making like going back to making for corporate sponsors. I mean, we have a lot of events coming up like that, that's coming up in July. What about brochures? Them doing brochures about that would be able to be issued out to the participants in the essence. We have a lot of people that's going to be using Uber on the festival. It's going to be coming up in July of this year.
Safety
So
tips?
how do you helping them making them participate, sponsor events like this, like business sessions like this, possibly about how to be safe using Uber, some kind of way.
That'll be a great platform.
I mean, really
Yeah.
capitalize on some of the events where we have a large amount of people, not only tourists but local people also go to Essence. They have a lot of free events at Essence at the convention center. Maybe having you come back, Zoe, and do one of your listening sessions or some type of session at Essence, but also making Uber sponsor that session and also provide some type of brochure flyer to the participants, local and tourists, about the importance of utilizing Uber in a safe way.
Yeah.
And having them be on the platform, or either at least have them speak, answer some of the questions, some of the concerns that some of the participants may have out in the audience about it. Because there's a lot of free sessions, there's a lot of free events that a lot of local and tourist people from out of town attend at Essence, doing that at the convention center. I think that would be a good session for you to participate in.
That would be awesome. That's an awesome suggestion.
That makes me think about a pilot city. Like, how interesting could it be to maybe do a pilot city in New Orleans or Nevada or Vegas, right? Where, yes, we have those brochures, but we also have like a social media campaign because we know everybody doesn't read brochures, but people are on Twitter, people are on
Yes.
social media. So some sort of pilot where we pilot all of these
But I think,
ideas.
I mean, you can really invest in the city wherever
Yes.
you're at. And I mean, you will be the speaker, you will be the presenter, but
Yeah.
they will be the sponsors of that event.
Yeah,
Where
I love
they
that.
will, pay you as a speaker, and if they're really concerned about it, they should let their money,
Put their money
let
where their
them
mouth is.
put them out for it. Yeah,
put their money
I
where
mean,
their mouth.
Yeah, no, great. And also, not just stopping at Essence, but also maybe contacting the black sororities and doing different stuff. Because, I mean, if you ain't never been to Adalto, aka Boule, it's huge.
Right.
So there's just so many educated and culturally aware black women that you can go. You can educate them about Uber. And then, of course, when people hear information, they take it back and they share it with their friends and their peers and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yeah.
They create more jobs. I
More
mean,
jobs.
when you start speaking to stuff like
They-
that, you
if
just
they ever
create
have
more.
a question about, they don't know anything about Essence. I mean, it's all in Essence magazine, how you can get a booth, to run a booth as a vendor. So there's no excuse where they can say, well, we would like to do this as a good corporate citizen, but we don't know anything about Essence. I mean, they advertise the Essence Festival. They also have it now in Dublin, Africa. But I mean, and I think it's November when they have it here, but the one that they normally have is the one here in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And if they need more information, they can go and look at through the Essence magazine all year round. They're constantly promoting the festival up until it comes to the city, in July every year.
July, right?
So I mean, you have all types of information where they can, even have a booth, giving that information or utilizing your organization to, kind of get the word out. Because I mean, you have a large group of African American females in the city during that time, from all over the country, and also a large amount of African American females who are taking advantage of as small businesses, as vendors at the convention center, selling their books, selling their scarves. So they're working like up into the wee hours of the night, at the convention center. It's still traveling back and forth. So I mean, they're gonna be using the Ubers,
They sure
to get
are.
around the city. So I mean, I think that would be a good way to make them really, show their concern.
The community support.
Yeah, support.
I mean, that would be huge, and that would be a sort of small introductory investment into a larger thing. So yeah, all right, y'all. I thank you. There's more food. Tea
Gone.
finished. That tea was so good. Tea is finished.
You hold on to mine.
But yeah, have food. And thank y'all so much. I will make sure you get my cards. And thank y'all. I appreciate it.
Huh?
Thank you.